All right, what's up, guys? If you guys haven't heard, Behavior just released the update for Decisive Strike. I'll leave a link in the description so that you can go check it out yourself. But pretty much, we got the official change to Decisive Strike. Now, I don't know when this is actually coming out because it doesn't say anything about release date. But I'd assume that it's going to be coming out in one of the newer patches that should be released soon, since they just announced the change. But it seems like they're prepared for everything, and hopefully, maybe in the next PTB, we'll get to try it out ourselves. But pretty much they identified the main community frustrations, which I think is a great place to start. They named dribbling, which I think a lot of people hated. Both killers and survivors hated dribbling. I know myself, being a survivor and killer main, just didn't like going through that. It just felt like such a time waster, and it also made the perk feel useless when you're playing survivor. So I don't know. Wasn't a big fan of the whole dribbling thing. The risk versus the reward. It's weird because they actually said that there's not much of a downside to the perk, which technically there is. If you miss the skill check, then you're out of a perk entirely. So there actually is a downside. Missing the perk makes it useless, but it's weird that they said that there's not much of a downside. But yes, obviously there is a huge upside when you successfully use the perk and you hit the skill check, because then you can snowball so much off of that. And then they also noted the obsession fact, which is, people knowing that the person has D-Strike and not going for them or tunneling them purposely, or playing differently around them knowing that they have Decisive Strike. So I think that was another key point that they brought up, which I think was good. And then up to 4 Decisive Strikes, which I think was another good point. Just multiple D-Strikes in a game always felt really bad, especially when, like, how the perk functioned. And if you had, like, high skilled level players, then they're most likely 9 out of 10 always going to hit it, and it just can become really frustrating for a killer. But yeah, they identified all the problems to the perk, which is really good because then they know what they can tweak around it and what they have to work around in order to improve it. And I think they did a really good job doing that. So pretty much now, as you can read, it says, using whatever's at hand, you stab your aggressor in an ultimate attempt to escape. After being unhooked or unhooking yourself, Decisive Strike will become active and usable for 60 seconds. While Decisive Strike is active, when grabbed by the killer, succeed a skill check to automatically escape the killer's grasp and stun the killer for 3 seconds. Succeeding or failing the Decisive Strike skill check will disable the perk. Successfully stunning the killer will result in you becoming the obsession. Only one obsession per match. Now, just off the bat, pretty much the big change is it only activates if you get off a hook. It doesn't matter how you get off the hook. As long as you get off the hook, you're good for the next 60 seconds, which is a minute. You get a chance to use the Decisive Strike if you get caught again, though. So, and now the stun duration is 3 seconds. I'm not sure if that was changed. I think it was 3 seconds previously. If not, it might have been 4. But I'd have to look into that. But pretty much that's the big change, is you have to be off of a hook in order for it to activate. Now, some of the questions that people have is like, how will obsession work? Because you're no longer the obsession in the beginning of the match. You become the obsession once you successfully hit the skill check. So then they actually answer a lot of the questions regarding that below right here. So, and I think they did a good job explaining everything as well. So the perk starts inactive, which I think most of us should understand that off of the fact that you need to be unhooked in order for the perk to activate. So no one starts off as obsession, and no one can use the perk if they're grabbed. You have to get off of a hook. So immediately that means, if you go the entire game without being hooked, then it becomes a dead perk. But the chances are, if you go the whole game without being hooked, then you don't really need Decisive Strike anyway. And then the new condition is, in a trial, any survivor that has the perk equipped can activate and use Decisive Strike if they meet the condition, being saved from a hook or unhooking themselves. So pretty much means 4 people can still take it, which, yes, kind of sucks, but all 4 people must meet the criteria in order for it to activate. And I think that does kind of balance it in a way, because sometimes you don't get to hook everyone, and sometimes people get hooked at different points, and sometimes when you unhook someone or someone gets unhooked and you're not telling them, you're going for someone else instead. So like, I think this does kind of balance it in a way, but we'll still have to see how that works, because You never know, 4 people take it and maybe it's still like a giant mess. Decisive Strike will only stay active for 40, 50, 60. So this is perk 1, 2, 3, or tier 1, 2, 3 rather, seconds after being unhooked. This window of opportunity gives the survivor only a limited time frame in which to trigger the perk after escaping the hook. So I think that's a really good point too. It pretty much only works in a certain window, whereas before D-Strike would work all the time. So I think that's a better way to improve the perk overall. The skill check area will be slightly larger to make it considerably more accessible to those who occasionally struggle with hitting the skill checks. Now, this one, I'm not sure why they did that one, because it seems like most of the changes are to balance it, right? I never thought D-Strike was that hard to hit. Now, you can make fun of me all you want, because I probably missed so many D-Strikes, and I think a lot of people have, but that's what made the perk have like some sort of balance. Like, it's already a second chance. Why would you make that second chance always guaranteed? You know, the second chance I feel like has to be earned, and I feel like making the skill check slightly bigger, cause like I don't know, I feel like it's dumb, especially when I think it gets gradually bigger when you get the tier 2 and the tier 3 version. So I'm not sure why they did that. I think if anything, maybe they should have just increased the size for tier 1. But I don't know. We'll have to see how big it actually is, because they don't actually show a picture of that. So we'll have to just wait. Decisive Strike skill checks were triggered during the pickup. This decision was made to help avoid dribbling and reduce the amount of time wasted for the killer. Now, I love this because now they pretty much canceled out dribbling. It's no longer going to be a thing, because as soon as the picking up animation procs, then so will the skill check. And I think that's a great way to destroy that whole dribbling mechanic, because now the killer doesn't have to deal with it, and the survivor doesn't have to go through it either. And you know, they don't get denied their entire perk off of like a stupid mechanic. So I think that's great. They fixed that problem entirely. Stunning the killer with Decisive Strike will result in the killer dropping the survivor, which pretty much is the same thing we're used to. You stun them and then they drop you and you run. So pretty much basic chain, or basic same mechanic. After successfully using Decisive Strike, you will immediately become the Obsession. This will remove the Obsession from any other player, and any perks that refers to you to the Obsession will now refer to you. So pretty much this answers a lot of people's questions and confusions and concerns, because I've seen a lot on like Twitter, people replying and saying like, how will Obsession work? Pretty much this answers it. Let's say someone goes in the game with Dying Light, that's the killer, and they already have their Obsession. If someone hits the Decisive Strike during that game, let's say it's someone that isn't already starting off as the Obsession, then the Obsession will automatically transfer to them, because there can only be one Obsession per match. Now, I actually love this change, because this actually makes a unique change up in the entire game and how everything will work. Because, you know, when you have perks like Rancer, when you have perks like just any obsession based perk, you know, you always have that one person that you're on the entire game. Like, just imagine you're like the Rancer victim for the entire beginning, and you know, because you know when you're the Rancer victim, and then at the last second it just changes to the next guy, and you're like, he ends up dying because you know, it automatically went to him. Like, I don't know, I feel like it'll just create different dynamics. That'll be a fun experience for killer and for the survivors. It'll be much more of a challenge, and I think it'll be funnier to see too, especially when you're playing with some of your friends. Now, ultimately, they pretty much said that they believe that these changes will help enrich the player experience for both killers and survivors, and they're excited to see some feedback. Now, I've already seen some of the feedback on Twitter and some of the DBD streams that I personally watch, and it seems like the feelings are very mixed. Now, I can understand that, because that's just how always, like, the DBD community has always been. You always have mixed feelings. You have people on different sides of the argument. You have your killers arguing for one side, you have your survivors arguing for one side, and it seems like that's pretty much how it is right now. It seems like it's the decision split. You have people thinking that it's a buff, you have people thinking that it's a nerf, and you have people thinking that it's a fair balance and a step in the right direction. Now, that's pretty much where you guys come in. I want to know your guys' thoughts and opinions. Mine, really quickly, I honestly think that these are really good balance changes. I think this balances it out entirely. I think it becomes a perk that that just works differently. I think it works well for survivors, and I don't think it's too strong. I don't think it cucks the killers in like a way where it becomes like a really big problem in the game for them. So I actually like the changes. And another thing that I've noticed, and I think a lot of people have started picking up on, is that it actually feels like an anti-tunnel perk. So if you notice, it activates 60 seconds after you're unhooked. This will make it so that people don't tunnel on the people that get immediately unhooked. And I think that changes up the game a lot for in a positive way for a lot of people, because people don't like tunneled gameplay, especially the survivors. I've seen so many survivors complain about being tunneled. So taking a decisive strike can help you, not get tunneled. So I think it just changes up the perk tremendously. I think this is a balance, but like I said, we'll have to try it for ourselves and see how it actually works in the game. So I think it's too early to say for now, but I'm gonna go with that. It's a fair balance. But I still want to know your guys' opinion, so leave it in the comments. What do you guys think? Buff, nerf, balance? And if you guys have some changes or things that you think should be worked on, also let me know, and then maybe you can post it on the forums, and we can give feedback to behavior so that they can work it on the next patch. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to check out the forum post. I'll leave a link in the description. You can check it out for yourself. Be sure to read up on it. And yeah, we'll see how things go from here. Have a good one, and thanks for watching.